Hello, my little draconic wolfkins. I hope that you're doing well. If you like what you see and hear, please like, subscribe, and turn on that notification. Alright, let's get started. Opening day of deer season in northern Michigan is viewed more as a holiday than just another outdoor activity. People from all over the state come in droves, filling all the campgrounds, hotels, and bars the night before. I never understood that mixing alcohol and deer rifles. Most of the people don't care if they even see a deer. They take this time to escape their everyday lives and just relax. Although some are too hungover to even get up the next morning and trek through the woods to their hunting spot. Our family is fortunate and we have resided in the small town of Grayling, Michigan since the early 1930s. We have a couple hundred acres of land that is used primarily for farming and hunting. There are whitetail mountains displayed in all of our homes that we can assess to how fruitful our land is. We used to get together the night before opening day and partake in several intense poker and entourage games. Additionally, we would take this time to do some last minute strategizing and go over our gear by doing a mental checklist. Our opening day gathering spot was held in our family cabin that is set deep in the woods on our property. To get to this location, you would have to turn on a four-wheel drive and travel via a rugged two-track that would bounce your head off the truck roof if you weren't holding on. Concussions aside, it was a very beautiful location. The cabin consists of one bathroom and two bedrooms with a pair of bunk beds in each, and a pull-out couch in the living room. The main living area is an open concept space with a living room, kitchen, and dining room connected. Signal is non-existent at the cabin, so there is a vast collection of magazines, books, and VHS tapes for the ancient TV that I don't think has been used in over a decade. However, these items have a thick layer of dust on them due to the fact that camaraderie at the cabin leaves little to no time for boredom. Unfortunately, this was not the case. A couple of years back, as the years went by, fewer and fewer hunters made the trip to the family cabin. The cabin, as I wish to remember it, was once a place full of family, friends, and great memories, but now tarnished by a sickening nightmare. The weather that night was frigid cold, and upon my arrival to the cabin, I immediately started a fire in the wood stove. This would prove to be very little to take the frigid edge off. The snow fell around the cabin, creating a thick layer of fluff that muffled any sound, creating an eerie quietness. I remember standing over the fire, cooking a can of soup that sat upon the stove. Next to it, a pot of water was boiling to make a cup of hot chocolate. I knew I was going to be there for only one night, but I remember feeling especially lonely. This was because for the first time in camp history, only one person was staying in the cabin that November night. My family all had something else going on. My dad had started a new job that had him working the next morning, although he didn't mind because it was a great step up from his previous job. My uncle and cousin were going to hunt on another location that was over an hour away, which meant they would have to get up around 3 a.m. to make the drive to their hunting blind. I didn't blame them for wanting to sleep a little longer. So there I was with my tin can meal walking over to the dust off the VHA steps when I looked outside and saw something standing outside the front window. It was looking right at me. I nearly flipped backwards trying to get away while bumping into the dining room table. I refocused all of my attention on the front window, but there was nothing. I could have sworn I saw a dark figure standing outside, but there was no tracks in the snow. I chalked it up to the snow falling a certain way, giving off a false illusion and possibly a small case of cabin fever. I turned on every light in the cabin, not wanting to see outside any longer and risk being fooled again by my overactive imagination. I was a third of the way through my movie when, with an empty soup can and half drink a cup of hot chocolate in front of me on the carved wooden coffee table, sprawled out on the dining room table and chairs were my hunting clothes and other gear. I had cleaned my rifle earlier in the night and laid it in the corner of the room by the head of the couch, just a couple of feet away from where I was sitting. The movie had ended, and I had laid there staring up at the ceiling when a wave of horrific emotions came over me. I was being watched. I was scanning the windows, trying to figure out where the hollowed stare was coming from when I saw it across the living room. My great-grandfather's prized deer mounted hung just above the entertainment center and was supposed to be facing the back of the cabin, but it was looking right at me. I started to scream as the neck made a series of popping noises. It sounded like bones and flesh tearing from their joints. The monstrosity began to lick me up and down. Another loud pop erupted the room as the animal's lower jaw fell to the floor, creating a loud thud and sending teeth flying all over the wooden floor. When I thought my screams couldn't get louder, I jolted from the couch, covered in sweat. It had been a dream. I sat there, my heart beating through my chest. I looked over at the clock on the microwave to see it was 3 o'clock in the morning. The deer mount across the room was looking in its proper direction, and I did not care to stare for more than a couple of seconds to ease my worries. I stood up, feeling like I was being watched still, which was to be expected after nightmare as hellish as that. The fire in the stove had burned down to just glowing coals, so I got it going to roaring flames again. I went over to the stick to fill the pot of water to prepare coffee for the morning hunt that would begin in a couple of hours. Halfway through filling the pot, I heard a sound that made my heart skip a beat. The floorboard behind me creaked, and with it came the vibration of footsteps. I was frozen where I stood. I didn't know whether to turn around and look or to try to do some kind of move to get away from whatever it was that was behind me. I worked up the courage and slowly turned around. There was nothing. At this point, I was thoroughly spooked. No, in fact, I was straight up terrified. Between the figure outside that I tried to convince myself wasn't real, the horrifying nightmare, and now the sensation of someone standing right behind me, I knew I wanted to leave. I told myself there was only a few more hours until I make the journey to my deer blind, and an hour or so after that, I would bring the that would bring the security of daylight. Then it hit me, a thought that hadn't crossed my mind. I was supposed to leave the cabin and walk through the darkness of the forest. This sent shivers down my spine. I knew I would have my rifle with me for protection, but this still didn't put my mind at ease. What I was dealing with didn't feel natural. I sat back down on the couch and began to think about how I wanted the morning to go. I determined that I would walk to my blind around 5:30 to get there before daylight came. I would have normally left sooner, but this would have allowed much less sitting time in the dark blind before the sun illuminated through the trees. I had somehow managed to doze off sitting up on the couch, but awakened by pounding on the cabin door. This erupted a fear through me like I had never experienced before. I stood there, staring at the door, waiting for another dreadful knock. Instead, my dad's deep voice came booming from the opposite side of the door. He sounded concerned, so I rushed to the door to see what he had brought him all the way down out here so early in the morning. I went to open the door but stopped. This made no sense. The door was unlocked. My dad might have given me a courtesy knock, but then he would have just let himself in. I knew I had fallen asleep, but I believed I would have heard his diesel truck pull up to the cabin. I took another step back and saw something in the corner of my eye. To the right of the cabin door hung a mirror that reflected most of the living room and kitchen area. What caught my eye was the reflection of a figure that crouched behind me in the middle of the room, ready to pounce. The sight of this thing made me want to puke. It was a deer that had flesh hanging from its body. The antlers on it jutted out in different directions. It was covered in infectious decaying skin. Then the pungent smell hit me like a ton of bricks and made me gag. A familiar sound echoed in the cabin. It was the popping noise I heard in my dream that had me come from the deer mount. This creature thrusted its body backwards, causing it to now stand on its hind legs. I had to get out of there. The keys to my vehicle hung below the mirror on the antler that we had screwed into the wall to make a homemade key rack. I grabbed them and flung open the door. The sound of hooves crashed behind me and clacking against the floorboards. Unlock about on my key fob 20 times before reaching my truck, even though it was just a few yards from the cabin. I jumped in and floored it out of there, not daring to look back. I have never returned to the cabin. The land that the cabin is on currently pending for sale. A couple of guys from downstate trying to buy. I hope it doesn't go through. The only advice I could give you is if you come across an abandoned cabin in the north central Michigan woods, do not approach it. In fact, get out of those woods as fast as possible.